The following recording was created one morning while I was in the greenhouse watering my plants. When I first picked up the phone to make the recording, I thought I was just making a memo for myself to remember something. But as I began recording and God began revealing to me the things that are mentioned in this recording, I began realizing that this is information that needs to be shared. The first 10 minutes or so of this recording has a lot of background noise. I was in the process of watering plants, and you'll hear a lot of chickens in the background pretty much throughout the whole recording. But the information that is shared in this recording is extremely important. And after recording it, I realized that this information needs to be shared with everyone. It's not just a memo for me. It's a memo for all of God's creation. And it's a very important one. It's about an hour and a half long, but I promise you, by the time you get to the end of this recording, if you're willing to take the time to listen to it, your eyes will be opened, and you will realize some truths, some very important truth about life, our country, and things that we have forgotten that need to be remembered. So I hope that you will take the time to listen. Take the time and listen to what God revealed to me. And I hope this is as impactful to you as it was to me as I was recording it. And if it is as impactful to you as it was to me, let me know. Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening. Today is Sunday, May 15th, 2022. Jeremy, you were out watering in the greenhouse this morning, and the Holy Spirit started revealing something to you that you need to remember. And that's why you're making this recording. It's very important that you remember it. It's very important. You can't rush this. You can't rush it. It's got to be in God's time. And you got to trust Him. Because when the time comes, He'll give you the words to speak. The Holy Spirit will give you the words to speak, because the Holy Spirit just revealed all of this to you. Right now, watering the garden. Everything that God has shown you about His holy plant, everything He has shown you, your personal experience, people that you know in your life, the changes that you've seen in them, it's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that you met David, and he testifies to you that when he started using God's holy plant, his seizures stopped. He hasn't had a seizure since he's been consuming God's holy plant, burning the incense the way God commanded us. It's not a coincidence. And since he's been in your life the past year and a half, and you've been helping him have access to God's holy plant, His herb-bearing seed that He created for a reason. Ever since David has had access to that, his life has changed. He said he used to have seizures and wake up in the hospital not even knowing how he got there. One time he woke up with a tube down his throat. So it was the worst experience of his life, waking up with a tube shoved down his throat. He described it as hell, waking up in hell. That would be a miserable experience. But he would have seizures that would cause him to have to go to the hospital. And because of God's holy herb-bearing seed that He created, David has not had that issue. It's gone. It's healed. It's no longer there. There's so many things that God has revealed to you about this herb in His Word. The fact that He even called it an herb-bearing seed. The fact that He created it in the beginning and gave it to us. And originally called it our meat. That was God's description of it. It's not the kind of meat we eat today, not the kind of meat the world has taught us to desire and crave and love the taste of. In the beginning, God's meat was the herb-bearing seed. It was important. It was our fuel. That's all meat is. It's fuel. It's our gasoline for our engine. That's what meat is. God's meat, His gasoline, His fuel that He created for His perfect engine. His perfect creation. Our human body that He made, He created a certain fuel for it. And without it, the engine doesn't work. It doesn't run. The herb-bearing seed. Genesis chapter 1, verse 29, He called it our meat. It was our fuel. He created it. And it has healing powers. It has healing properties. It helps us to see Him. It helps us to believe in Him. It helps us to have faith in Him. It helps us to love each other. One of the most important commandments that Jesus gave us, second only to one, which says to love God with all of our heart, mind, and soul. Second only to that one. But Jesus tells us to love each other. To treat each other the way we would want to be treated. To love each other. And God created an herb-bearing seed that has been proven time after time after time that it allows us to love each other. That's what it truly does. Not the false accusations that was made by Anslinger back in 1936 or 37 when he introduced the Tax Act of marijuana, convincing Senator Brown that it was evil, making lies about it, creating lies about it, falsifying what it was. To Senator Brown, convincing the senator that it was an evil plant. It made people kill people. Made people do crazy things. Insane things. Just evil, just pure evil. At one time, Anslinger had convinced people that it was the most evil thing ever created, above any other drug. There's a lot of speculation as to why Anslinger did that. My guess is it had to do with money. Everything does. In the name of money, we do a lot of horrible, evil things. Truly evil. But he convinced the senator that day and everyone in that courtroom, and has convinced everyone else with false accusations on publications, movies, TV shows, newspapers originally. They have convinced everyone of the evilness of this plant, this herb-bearing seed, rather, that God created, and has convinced everyone over the years that it is evil. It's a drug. It's evil. God made a mistake when He created it. God made a mistake. He shouldn't have created this. This is a horrible, evil thing God made. How dare God create this for us? How dare God create this for us? We're going to make it illegal all over the face of the earth. God made a mistake. I cannot believe God gave us this. This evil plant that makes people kill each other. Why would God create something like that? Well, since God made a mistake, we're going to fix it. This plant needs to be illegal all over the face of the earth, and if someone gets found with it, they need to spend a lot of time in prison. I mean a lot of time. They need to spend time away from their family, their wives, their children, lose everything in their life, their jobs, everything. Their complete freedom of life, their pursuit of liberty, happiness. Everything the Bill of Rights said that we had rights to. Religion. Everything. They lose all of their rights. They can no longer be free. They're in a jail cell for years. That should be the punishment. That has to be, it has to be severe like that. I mean, it has to be severe to teach people to never, ever touch this evil thing that God created ever again. It's the only way to teach them. You got to punish them that severe. Take it all away from them. Take away their freedom, lock them up in a small jail cell, control the rest of their life for as many years as we can get. Four ought to be plenty. 4 years. After 4 years, 4 years will break somebody in prison. It will. 4 years will break you. You spend 4 years in a tiny confinement cell away from your friends and family and loved ones. I'm pretty sure after 4 years you'll be broke. The first gentleman that was ever arrested and put in prison for 4 years was found in possession of 2 what the world has labeled as joints. 2 rolled up cigarette looking things that had ground up flour inside of it. That's all it was, just ground up flour. There were no chemicals. There were no harmful chemicals. Like some of the drugs that are made today are made with things that we know to be poison, without a doubt. We know it to be poison. There are labels on the can saying do not consume this, but it's used to make certain drugs that people use today. Drugs that the marijuana plant has been put in the same category of. But this gentleman had 2 rolled up joints, cigarette looking things of flour. Nothing else added, just ground up flowers. They're the buds that appear on that particular plant, that herb. That's all they were, just flowers. Flowers from a plant. Flowers from an herb that bears seed when it grows, that produces seed naturally the way God created it. There's a female and a male plant. And when they grow, and you can actually see the difference between the male and the female. It's a very unique plant. It's a very special plant. I say plant, but it's an herb. We know them as plants because that's what I was taught my whole life. In the world that I live in, they're called plants. I say plants because I spent my whole life learning it that way. But God revealed to me that in the beginning it was called an herb. That was His choice of word. When we translate the original language that the Jews used when they wrote the Bible, when we translate their language into our language, that word is called an herb. And when that herb grows, it bears seed. It reproduces itself naturally. It reproduces itself. God made it that way. He intended for it to grow everywhere, all over the face of the earth. Everywhere. It reproduced itself. We didn't have to do anything. It just reproduced. It dropped seed and it grew. They regrew. They were always meant to be here. Everywhere. Everywhere. Why would God create something so evil and make it automatically reproduce? Man, you know what? I love creation, I love man, and I love Adam and Eve, but I'm going to make this one plant. And I'm just going to make it so evil that it makes them want to kill each other. That's what I'm going to make. and I'm going to make it grow everywhere. I'm going to make it reproduce itself so bad, it's just going to be everywhere on the earth, and they're going to see this plant every second of every day. When they walk past a field of herbs, they're going to see this plant growing everywhere. Beside the streets. I mean, they're going to see it driving down the road. And I'm going to make it evil. So if they touch it, they're going to kill each other. It's going to make them crazy. And I'm going to sit up here and laugh about it. Every time they touch it and they become crazy and they do something crazy and they kill each other, I'm just going to laugh about it. It's funny. It's just entertainment for me. I mean, obviously that scenario is absolutely ludicrous that God would think that way. Not the God that founded this country, not the God that our forefathers knew when they wrote the Bill of Rights and the Constitution that's supposed to protect our rights. Not when they were writing that, not when they were using the paper from that herb that we know for a fact and have documentation that they wrote their documents on that specific herb, used it for all kinds of stuff. It was required to be grown back then because they knew the significance of it. They knew the significance of it. God didn't make a mistake when He created this specific herb bearing seed the way it was created to bear seed and reproduce automatically on its own. It's not a forbidden tree. There was only one forbidden tree. Just one. And it was in the middle of the garden. It was just one in there. God didn't plant multiple ones and put them all around the garden so that everywhere Adam and Eve stepped, they would see the forbidden tree. Oh, don't touch that. Oh, it's right there again. Don't touch it. Oh, there's another one. God said don't do it. No, it was in the middle of the garden, and it was one of them. One. One forbidden tree. This is not it. He created this herb-bearing seed, and He called it meat. And if we believe anything else, Satan has deceived us. This world that we live in has deceived us because of what it has shown us. It started with the newspaper publications that Anslinger and his group of people that he worked with, I wanted to say another word, but I didn't. I held my tongue. I want this to be of God. I don't want this to be of me. I want this message to be from Him, not me. This is His truth. This is His message. This is Him setting the captives free. This herb-bearing seed that God made was put here to be our meat. And in order to use it, it has so many uses. I mean, one use is it allows us, I can't even describe. I could give you explicit details about things that have happened in the past 9 years of my life. I can give you explicit details of what this herb-bearing seed has done in my life. It has saved my family. It has cured my ulcerative colitis that the world said was incurable, uncurable, whatever that word is. It was not able to be cured according to the world standards, according to their medical abilities, according to their educated understanding of the body, which they go to school many, many, many years to learn. Many years. They spend most of their life in school trying to learn how to heal the body, supposedly. But I went to probably 10 different gastroenterologists that specialize in the colon, and none of them knew why I had ulcerative colitis. No clue. Well, we think it's because of this, and we think it's because of that. It's probably this. Well, we're not really sure. Well, how do you cure it, Doc? Well, we don't really have a cure. We just have things you can take that'll help with the symptoms. But eventually we'll have to take your colon out. What? You got to take my colon out? Doc, what do you mean I've got to lose my colon?
How in the world am I going to go to the bathroom? Well, what we can do is we can cut this hole, this slit on your side, and we can pull your small intestine out of your stomach after we take your colon out, and we can pull this small intestine out, and we can hook a bag on it. That's our solution. It'll help you live. I mean, yeah, you'll have to live with a bag on your hip, but it's better than dying, because eventually it's going to turn into cancer. Well, Doc, how long before it happens? Well, you probably got about 7 years, typically, on average. Most people have theirs taken out in about 7 years. So my only option is to take my colon out of my body, wear a bag on my hip that collects poop for the rest of my life. The rest of my life, that's what I've got to do. And in the meantime, I've got to take medications that help me with symptoms. I didn't ask this question then, but I should have. Doctor, is there any side effects to this medications that I'm going to have to take? I didn't ask that question. I learned the hard way after taking medication after medication after medication after medication, because most of them didn't even work, until I finally got to one that had such horrible side effects that it pretty much almost killed me. Almost killed me. It almost completely shut my body down completely. It almost took me out. That was their solution for ulcerative colitis. That was how this world wanted to cure ulcerative colitis. That's what they went to school all those years to learn, so that they are professionals and they know more than me now. I mean, we look at doctors in this world as gods. We believe everything they tell us. Everything. We go to the doctor, oh, well, you need this. You need to take this medication. No, I don't, Doc. No, I don't. I don't need to take your medications. I don't need to put your poisons into my body. I don't. I don't want your side effects. I don't need your man-made, lab-created, sorcery-created medications. That's another thing that God has revealed to me. What the definition of sorcery is and how we use it in this country to modify everything that we use. Everything we put in our bodies has been created by sorcery. They have been genetically modified. That is sorcery when you do something like that. It's witchcraft. It's altering God's creation. God's perfect DNA, His perfect creation, His perfect genetics that He didn't mess up. God doesn't mess up. He's perfect. Everything He created was perfect. We've messed it up. We've messed it up. God created an herb-bearing seed in the beginning and He called it meat. He told us to consume it for a reason, because it has so many healing properties inside of it, so many cannabinoids that exist in that plant, that we have recently discovered that our whole body is full of an endocannabinoid system. We have an endocannabinoid system, an entire system inside of us. An entire system of receptors that receive something. A receptor receives things. And our body has tons of them. The only way they're going to get there is if God put them there. They're not made out of synthetic. They're not robot receptors. Man didn't put them there. God did. He created it that way. That was His perfect design. His design. So if we have an endocannabinoid system inside of us that was created to receive cannabinoids, and cannabinoids exist in the cannabis plant, and the cannabis plant is the one that the world calls marijuana, and that is the herb-bearing seed that God created in the beginning and called it our meat, our fuel. Is it a coincidence that it can heal my ulcerative colitis? Is it? Can that be a coincidence that when I started using the cannabis plant 9 or so years ago, when I started first doing that, is it a coincidence that within a year of using it, my ulcerative, let's just say UC to make it easy. my UC was gone. 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 And it's been gone for 8 or so years. I haven't dealt with ulcerative colitis, a disease that if anyone's ever had ulcerative colitis, you know the pain I'm talking about. I had it for 4 or 5 years. The pain was so debilitating you couldn't move. You didn't want to do anything. I couldn't get out of bed. I didn't want to move. I just wanted to sit on the toilet 24/7, just in case another, I can't even describe the experience, another urge to go to the bathroom. I'll just say that. Because ulcerative colitis is so bad, I have stood in front of someone having a conversation and gone to the bathroom in my pants. Because with ulcerative colitis, you don't get a warning. There is no warning. You don't have time to get to a bathroom. You don't. Wherever you are at that moment, it is coming out. It is a volcano that is exploding, and there is no amount of muscle in your rectum area that can hold that volcano shut. It comes out wherever you are. Even if you're in your car and you have to get off on the side of the road, which I have had to do before, and run out into an open field where the weeds are just high enough to cover maybe my waist, but you can see me sitting out there. And thankfully I had an old t-shirt in my car that I could use to wipe. But it was either that or do it in my pants in the car. The open field looked like a better option, even though I was out in the wide open. Thankfully, I don't know, maybe somebody saw me, maybe they didn't. No one confronted me about it, but it's a horrible feeling to have to do something like that. Horrible. The pain was so severe at nights I couldn't sleep. So severe during the day sometimes that I was immobilized. I'm telling you, living life that way, if you don't have to, no one would want to go through that. No one. And if anyone hears this that has, or if I'm going to say has, because unless you've done what I've done, you probably don't know that you can be healed. The world, the doctors don't know. They can't heal you. If you're going to a doctor for ulcerative colitis, save your time and save your money. They cannot heal you. The only thing they can do is give you drugs that control the symptoms temporarily as it slowly shuts down your body's immune system. Because that's how they work. And you'll have severe side effects from it. Prednisone is some of the worst stuff you can put in your body. I have been on prednisone. I have seen the effects of prednisone on my body. I know what it does to our bodies. And it will kill you if you stay on it long enough. A good friend of mine, her sister died because she was on it for most of her life. She was on prednisone for most of her life, and it finally took her out at a very young age. She had just had a child. Just had a child, and the prednisone took her out. And now the child has been being raised by her sister. Thankfully, she had a sister that was willing to take her child in and love it. Him or her, I don't say it, it's person. Love the child. By the way, that's conditioning of the world. I've only truly known the Lord for the past 9 years, but prior to that, the world had my mind. It taught me everything to think. It taught me everything to say. It filled my heart with junk. And God says, what's in your heart comes out of your mouth. God's getting all that junk out of me. It's been there for a long time. And I've known the Lord now for about 8 years. It happened on June 28 of 2013. I don't know, and my math isn't all that great right now because I'm not focused on math, but whatever that is, June 28 of 2013 till today, that's when God revealed himself to me. In an amazing way. There was no doubt in my mind. None. Absolutely zero doubt that God was real that day. He revealed himself to me and I had zero doubt. And that's when we're truly in the presence of God, when there is no doubt. No doubt. If you want to know how to be in the presence of God, have zero doubt. Because faith can exist in a place of doubt. It's not possible. They cannot coincide. It's either faith or it's doubt. Just a little bit of doubt makes it not faith. Just a little bit. Just a little bit of doubt makes it not faith. But when you're in the presence of God, when there is zero doubt, and I have been there when He revealed Himself to me, you don't forget. There are very few dates in my life that I have taken the time to remember or made important, and that one absolutely changed my life. And the more time I'm on this earth, the more I can look back and see all the things that God did and has been doing and has shown me and has revealed to me, and how it has changed my life, healed my ulcerative colitis, saved my marriage, opened my eyes to my wife and my children. Completely opened my eyes. It was as if the blindfold had been lifted off, and now I could finally see. I could see God. I could see my wife, my children. God revealed all of that. And it wasn't until I started burning the incense of the herb-bearing seed that He created. Burning the incense. There's something significant about that. The reason I know it to be significant, because God showed me in His Word that it was significant. He ordained it. He asked for it to be done. He commanded it to be done throughout our generations. That means never ending. Forever. Forever and ever, never to end. He says, burn this incense and keep it holy. See, that's significant. He said, keep it holy. This is a holy herb. God created it. It's holy. If it's of Him, it's holy. It's meant to be holy. And that's where a lot of people mess up that they don't make it holy. They use it for selfish desires, selfish pleasures, pleasures of their flesh, things that make them feel good. It's all about feeling good. That's the only reason they burn the incense, is because they want to feel good. It's all about them. They make it all about them. When I was younger, I smoked marijuana. I know what it did to me then, because I burned it for me. I burned it to be able to party with my friends and to feel good, to get high and to get stoned. That was the whole purpose in using it. That was my reason for using it. It made me feel good. It was all about me. But God instructed us. He said, when you burn the incense, keep it holy. Make it holy. That means make it about Him. Make it about Him. Before I burn the incense, before I put fire to this herb-bearing seed that God created. By the way, God created the herb-bearing seed and He created fire. If anyone out here believes that God didn't create fire, please raise your hand. Let me know so I'll understand that your brain doesn't work right. There's something wrong. You don't comprehend the way you're supposed to. God made fire. God created fire. Fire is an amazing, magical thing. I say magic because that's the only way my brain can comprehend what I see. That's God's magic, the way fire works. It's a living, breathing thing. I mean, it breathes. It has to have oxygen, right? And it's living. I mean, it's jumping all over the place. It's not sitting still. It's moving. That's the way I relate to something that's alive. It moves. It breathes oxygen. Fire does that. But God created it. We didn't create fire. We can duplicate fire, but we didn't create fire. That is not of us. That is of God. He made it that way. He created fire to do what fire does. He made it to do that. We didn't make it to do that. Don't be deceived by fire. When you burn something, God created it that way. It's not a coincidence that things burn when you put fire to it. God made it that way. For most of my life, I would watch something burn and I would see what the world calls smoke rise in the air from the wood. Oh, that's just smoke. It just happens when you burn something. That was the explanation I was told as a kid. It's just smoke. It just burns when you burn something. I mean, it's the way it happens. It's what it is. That's all. It's just smoke. There was no explanation of, well, you see, God made this thing you're burning here. He created that. And then God made this thing called fire. And that's what you see there, these orange, yellow, red, blue flames that's moving all around, dancing all around. It's breathing on oxygen. Fire without oxygen will not survive, so it breathes oxygen just like we do. And the amazing thing happens when you put this thing called fire that God made with this other thing that God made. When you put these two things together that God created, and the fire burns the herb-bearing seed, there's this amazing incense that is released. It's an incense that is released. It's almost as if it looks to me like it's the spirit of that herb. It's like the spirit. If you can imagine a spirit, the best description we can have of a spirit being released from something. Like when our body dies, our spirit is released from our body. It's no longer held by this body. It's released. The spirit is released when it's burned. And when you burn this herb-bearing seed with the fire and the spirit of this herb is released, an incense is created. And when God made a man, God made the man with certain abilities. Now I'm going above doctors' minds right now. I'm going above their education right now. Okay? You didn't learn this in college. This is from God. Listen to me and you'll learn truth. Not a bunch of lies that you learned in college by some other person. This is of God. This is the way things happen. When God created man, He made the decision. He decided that He was going to put a nose on our face. That's what He decided to do. And He decided to allow that nose to breathe in everything. Everything. He made our nose to be able to breathe in and smell everything. He created it that way. He put a sinus cavity that goes from the openings of our nose that goes right up into our heads. We have sinus cavities up there next to our brain. I know this because I had a doctor one time that convinced me that the best way he could cure my sinus congestion, because I had already been to numerous doctors and he was the specialist in Birmingham. He was the best of the best, I was told. Brad Woodsworth was his name. Woodsworth, something like that. But he was the best of the best, and I was sent to him so he could help me cure my sinus congestion. And his solution for my sinus congestion problem was for him to go up inside of my forehead area with some type of metal drill and cut away bone that was in my sinus cavity. Even though they were already open, they weren't closed at this point. I could see black space up there, even though the black space was covered up with mucus and boogers and everything else that existed in there. It wasn't as black as it should be because of all of that. But his solution was to go in there and cut the bone out and make the cavity bigger. And stupid me let him. Gullible me trusted the doctor more than common sense that should have told me, hey, dummy, Don't let some man that practices medicine go up inside of your head with a metal drill and cut your bone. Don't do this. This is dumb. I convinced myself that this man had the ability to do that. Unfortunately, I realized that he did not. Even though he was the best of the best, and this was his professional, educated recommendation, based on all of his education and knowledge that he's attained in his life up to this point, his solution to my sinus congestion was to cut my bone, and I let him do it because I trusted him. And within 2 weeks of getting home from the surgery, the artery busted. Okay. It busted from where he had severed it when he was up in my forehead with a metal drill. He severed the artery when he was in there cutting my bone, and I guess I must have almost bled to death on the table, because when I woke up in the recovery room 8 hours after I was supposed to be out of surgery. Recovery shouldn't last that long. It wasn't supposed to last but 2 hours, but I woke up with so much blood in my stomach, I started throwing up. I was in absolute hell. I woke up in hell in that hospital that day, in absolute misery. I was so miserable. I screamed at the nurse. I said, I don't care what you've got to get. Put me out. Knock me out. I don't want to be here. Knock me out. I was so miserable. There was so much blood inside of my stomach. I was just throwing up nothing but blood, because all that blood had rushed down my throat when he severed my artery during surgery. And he cauterized it back. He burned it back. That was his solution for that. He burned the artery back together and cauterized it and sent me home. Didn't tell me that happened during surgery. Didn't mention it at all. Did not tell anyone, didn't tell me, didn't tell my wife. He didn't tell anybody that it happened. This is all hindsight. I didn't know when all this was happening, when I was bleeding out that night, dying in the parking lot with my wife and my child in the back seat, watching their dad bleed out. I mean, it was like someone had opened a faucet in my head and all this blood started pouring. Not dripping, not running, pouring. It's the only way I can describe it is a faucet being turned open and water pouring out of in the sink. That was coming out of my nose. And nothing I could do would stop it. Nothing. It was an artery up inside my forehead. I couldn't get anything up there to touch it, to keep it, to seal it off, to keep the blood from coming out. Nothing could get up in there that far. It wasn't right there on the inside of my nose. It was up in my forehead where he cut it. And we were in a parking lot looking for dinner that night when that happened. Our world ended that night. At that moment, our world had ended. She was trying to rush me to the closest medical facility we could get to. Thankfully, there was one a mile down the road, because if it was any further than that, I would have bled out in the car. There's no way I could have made it 30 miles down the road to another hospital. There's not that much blood in a person when it's pouring out of you that quickly. Eventually, it taps out. There's nothing else there. The blood's not pumping anymore. There's no oxygen getting to your brain anymore. The heart there's nothing there to pump. And I laid on that table that night, accepting that they weren't going to be able to get it to stop and I was going to bleed out, because they couldn't. By the time she got me to the local emergency clinic, and by the time they got me back to a room, and by the time they sat me on a table, I had been bleeding, I don't know, for 5 minutes or so at minimum. Minimum 5 minutes. If you can imagine blood pouring out of someone that quickly over a period of 5 minutes, at some point there's not much left after that. But I sat there on the table that night and I said my last prayer. And I asked my wife to come back to the room, and she said it looked like a war zone. It looked like someone had been brutally murdered in there. There was blood all over the walls, blood all over the floors, blood all over the nurses. Blood everywhere, because it was spewing out of me, and they couldn't stop it. They couldn't stop it. And I accepted it. There's no way I can survive this. It's not possible. There's no more blood left in me at this point. It can't be. It's all over the car. It's all over the parking lot. It's all over in front of the reception's desk. It's all over this room. It's all over these people. There's no more blood in me. Of course, all this is happening really fast in my mind. And all of a sudden, my hearing goes dim and my eyes start fading. And I'm like, this has got to be it. I'm passing out. I'm passing out. This has got to be it. There's not enough blood in me anymore. And I started my last prayer at that point. Lord, please accept my soul into heaven to be with you for eternity. Please, Lord, if there's anything that I haven't asked forgiveness for, please forgive me now. Receive me, Lord. Allow me to be with you. Allow me to be with you, Lord. Because I believed I was coming home. And I told my wife bye. And I have no recollection of what happened after then. After that, I don't. I have no memory of it. Only details I have is what my wife told me. That's all. Somehow I ended up in an ambulance to the major hospital down in Fairhope, Thomas Hospital. And I stayed there for a couple of days, hooked up to an IV as they pumped fluids back into my body. And she said at one point my body relieved itself with its last defecation movement. And it was so bad, this is her description, but the smell was so bad. First off, the nurses wouldn't go in there and clean me. They wouldn't. They would not do it. They even asked them to do it and they wouldn't do it. My wife ended up she had to do it. She had to clean me. Thankfully, I have no recollection of this at all. But apparently my body released itself of everything, as it does when it's dying. Or maybe even after death, I don't know. But the body releases itself of all of the stuff that's in it. And it came out and it smelled like death. She tells me that our friends were coming to see me there at the hospital. And they got to the door and cracked the door open. And she says, "Oh my gosh, what is that smell? Is he already dead?" It was that bad. These are her words. I don't know. I wasn't there, thankfully. Physically I was there, but mentally, spiritually, I wasn't there. I'm hoping I was with the Lord during that time. I don't know. They say when you're not in the body, you're with Him. And maybe we just don't get an opportunity to remember being with Him. All I know is I wasn't in the hospital for a couple of days, and I don't remember anything until they were taking me back to Birmingham to have another surgery. I was riding in the back of the vehicle, and I have a faint memory of riding back to Birmingham to have another surgery because they couldn't get it to completely stop. I had to go back and get surgery again. I had to go back again. So they take me back to Birmingham, and he cauterizes the artery again. He goes back up inside of my forehead again with utensils and tools and everything he needs, a torch, whatever he uses to cauterize that artery. He goes back up inside my forehead for a second time. And I think he even went through my eye socket. Because to this day, my eyeball bulges out on the right side for some reason. And Kelly said that she told him that he went in through my eye socket. That's how they had access to it. So maybe he messed something up in the side of my eye, I don't know. But for some reason, the eye that he just so happened to go in through bulges out now. It's not normal anymore. He messed that up too. But he goes in there for a second time, recauterizes the artery, and sends me back home. He tells me everything's great again. A week later, I wake up from sleeping. Imagine you've been asleep, you go to sleep that night, everything's fine. You wake up the next morning as blood is gushing down the back of your throat as you're laying there on the bed. Blood is gushing down the back of your throat. Not dripping, not running, gushing. I wake up in a panic. I go to the sink as the blood's pouring out of my nose again. I scream at Kelly, call 911, you got to get an ambulance. We can't make it to the hospital. It's too far away. I'm not going to make it. She called an ambulance. This time it was so bad, they ended up having to give me a ride to Birmingham in the ambulance. That was how severe this was. I had to get to Birmingham that quick. They had to take me in the back of an ambulance all the way to Birmingham from Fairhope. That's 3 hours in the back of an ambulance. And I was so miserable the whole ride that he had to keep me sedated. I don't know what he was using to sedate me, but I would wake up about every 30 minutes or so, and he would have to knock me back out because I'd look at him and say, man, I can't do this. You got to put me back out. I mean, it felt like I was drowning. I couldn't breathe. I was drowning on my own blood. That's what that experience is like. That was the worst fear of my life, is drowning. I think for a lot of people, drowning is something that just seems horrible. It seems like a horrible way to die. I mean, it's not pleasant to go through. And I was drowning on my own blood. Both times. The first time, that's what it felt like. This time, that's what it felt like. And I didn't want to be in existence. I didn't want to experience that. I couldn't handle it. It's not a fun thing to drown. So he kept me sedated all the way to Birmingham, and I go in for a third surgery. And they take me in as soon as I get there. I mean, I didn't wait overnight. I mean, he went ahead and took me in. So he goes up inside my head a third time. And I looked at him before this surgery. I said, Doctor, do not make me have to come back here. Whatever you have to do, fix it. And instead of cauterizing it this time, he told me he stapled it. He said he found the trunk artery, the artery that fed that artery, and he stapled it closed so it would no longer feed it. That was his solution. Now, the first thought that I have is, wait a minute. That trunk artery fed other arteries. What about them? They're not going to receive blood anymore. Well, he says, well, you'll grow new ones. You don't need those right now. It's not going to cause any problems. That whatever those arteries were sending blood to and oxygen to at that moment, they're not going to die. You know, whatever that it was in your mind or your brain that those arteries were going to, you don't need those anymore. It's okay. They're going to be fine. They don't need oxygen. Your body will reproduce new arteries again. And I guess he's right. I'm still here today. I don't know if I feel like sometimes there's a part of my brain that's missing. Like the education I used to have is no longer there as far as vocabulary. I have a hard time thinking of saying the words that I want to think. I stutter more than I used to because I know what I want to say, but I can't think of the word that describes what I want to say. I can tell a difference. Regardless, I say that to say this. Please stop trusting doctors. Just stop. Stop thinking that they are gods, because they're not. They are dumb. They are not filled with God's wisdom. They don't know Him. God is robbed from them by the time they get out of those institutions that Satan has created to teach them things. Because I'm telling you, they are not filled with godly wisdom by the time they get out of college. They're just not. There's no wisdom there. They're not smart people. Stop going to doctors when you have a problem. If there's something wrong with your body, there is a reason. And doctors do not have the cure. They only have drugs that will treat your symptoms. That is it. And if they want to do surgery on you, it's the worst thing you can possibly do is allow them to do that. Do not let a surgeon go in and cut your colon out. You don't have to do that. There's another way. There's another way. And the world has kept it from us, I guess, since 1937. Because when they arrested that man for possessing flowers from the cannabis plant, 2 rolled up sticks of flour the size of a cigarette. They put him in prison for 4 years because of that. 4 years he sat in prison. This man wasn't doing anything wrong. He was helping people. They said he was selling it. Really? I don't know the truth to that. But how can you sell something that grows everywhere? Why would you have to sell it to anybody? There was a statement made by Senator Brown and Anslinger when they were having their conversation, and Anslinger was lying to Senator Brown about a lot of stuff. You can listen to the archives or read them. I've read them. All kind of lies said about this herb that God made by Anslinger to Brown, convincing him of the evilness of this plant. And as they're talking about it, Anslinger is trying to describe to Brown what the plant looks like, how to recognize it. And Senator Brown makes the comment, "Oh yeah, I see those all over the road. I see them all over the place." That's how abundant they were back then. I mean, they had to have been. Think about it. There is historical documentation. Historical documentation. We can all read it. It's not hidden. There are facts that exist that state that the founding fathers of this country utilized the cannabis sativa plant, which is known as marijuana. It's a cannabis sativa. But they used that herb for everything. For everything. Everything. And people grew it everywhere. As a matter of fact, they funded World War II with it. That's a fact. It had such value. It had such resource. It had such importance that it assisted us in World War II. I think 400,000 acres of it was grown to assist us in that war. Now we use a bunch of synthetic stuff in the place of this herb that God made. Now everything's man-made artificial stuff that we have to buy and they keep jacking the prices up on. It's ridiculous what things cost these days. Unbelievable. And they have complete control over it. Complete control. Everything is synthetic. Everything is artificial. Everything is modified. Nothing is natural anymore. Nothing is the way God created it. Every resource we use is no longer of God's. It is synthetic man-made materials. And everyone here that knows anything about industry knows that I'm telling the truth. There's no denying it. And I'm telling you that at one time in this country, every resource that we need was created by the herb. The herb-bearing seed that God made, that He called meat, that we call cannabis, that the world calls marijuana, that plant, the cannabis sativa, all in the one and the same, provided us with numerous resources. It's all documented. We can see everything that herb provided us. Why in the world would the founding fathers of this country that we live by, that our country was founded on, all the principles in the Bill of Rights, all of our constitutional rights, everything that exists in this country as far as our freedoms and liberties, was all documented by these people that grew cannabis sativa. They grew it. It was on their farm. They used it for everything. But it has been said that those founding fathers burned the incense as well. There's no reason to believe they didn't know about that. It's not possible. It's not possible that that plant has existed from the beginning of time, since the beginning of creation when God made it. It's not possible for that plant to exist ever since then, and the founding fathers not know about burning the incense from it? About burning the flower? That's insane to even think that's possible. It would take more faith to believe that it's not possible than faith to believe that it is possible. Especially when God, whom they served, I can promise you there is documented proof that they served God. We have dollar bills that say, "In God we trust," so that we wouldn't forget that it's God, not the money. Obviously, we've forgotten over the years, and we serve money now and not God. That's why everything's synthetic and artificial, because it's about money. If it was about God, we would use things God made. But we don't. We don't honor God in anything that we do, whether the ones that are making it or the ones that consume it. If we consume artificial things, if we consume synthetic things, if we buy these things, we're not honoring God. We're honoring money. And God says you can't have two masters. You can't serve Him and mammon. Mammon is riches. Mammon is money. And these people that control our country serve mammon. They don't serve God. Neither do the doctors. The rulers of this country that we live in, the ones that have taken control, our government, our leaders, serve mammon. They don't serve God. I know this to be true. It's not a false accusation. Their fruit, which we're known by, doesn't show it. Their actions does not show it. This country serves artificial synthetic items. It doesn't serve things, it doesn't use things that God made. God gave us an herb. There's documented history of it, that this herb could supply just about every resource we need in this country. It's been proven. That's why they required 400 acres of it to be grown for the war, because it can provide those resources. It does provide those resources. And it grew everywhere. Everywhere. Up until 1937. When they decided that it was evil and they wanted to put people in prison for having access to it. They made it a mission to annihilate this herb from the face of this country. And it just so happens that someone that was very good friends with Anslinger, that was convincing Senator Judge of the evilness of this plant, it just so happened that a man by the last name of DuPont was really good friends with him. And it just so happened that DuPont had the ability to make synthetic materials. But this cannabis sativa plant was going to keep him from being able to do that. He couldn't control the market as long as that plant, that herb existed. He had to remove it so there could be no competition, because that had been the crop, that had been the resource for hundreds of years. Hundreds. Since the founding fathers arrived on this continent, that herb has been the resource for everything. And this country was founded on the resources from that herb. And it was a great nation. A great nation. The nation we are today is nothing compared to the nation that existed when they created the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence. Those people were free. They were truly free. Truly free. Their government was created by free people. And if the people didn't like what the government said, the government changed it. The government served the people. The people didn't serve the government the way they do in today's society. Today the government thinks that we serve them. They mandate all these laws and rules and regulations and burden us. I mean, we are slaves to this country. We have to give them so much of our income. We have to give them this and give them that. If I don't pay for my house, if I don't pay for my land each year, they can legally come take it from me. They can put me and my wife and my 2 children, my 9-year-old and 12-year-old daughter, out on the street. Kick us out on the street with nowhere to live. All because I don't give them a real estate tax each year? Are you kidding me? How in the world have we let that be voted in? How have we let that happen? Our forefathers are rolling over in their graves saying, "You've got to be kidding me. What are y'all doing? This is not what we created. This is not what we created." It's so important. They've said it twice. They say it 3 times. It's not what we created. We created the Bill of Rights and the Constitution so this didn't happen. But y'all have let it happen. If I pay off my house, if I spend 30 years of my life, because that's what most mortgages are these days, 30 years. If I spend 30 years of my life paying on my house, paying triple that in interest, if my house is $100,000, it's going to be $300,000 by the time I get it paid off. And I spend 30 years of my life paying on that land and that house. And a financial hardship comes over me to where I can't afford to pay my real estate tax. Guess what happens? According to the law of this country, the state can come, the county, the state, whoever owns it, whoever I owe this tax to, they can come and kick me off of my property, put me out on the street with nowhere to live. Think about that. You spend your entire life trying to pay off your home. Just say you spent $500,000 buying your home. You finally retire. And because you don't pay a real estate tax, they come take it all from you? I mean, were we all drunk when we wrote that into existence? Were we all drinking alcohol that night? What in the world happened that made us think that was fair? What would convince us that is fair, that is a loving thing to do to your neighbor? That's a loving thing to do. How can we convince ourselves of that? Some of us go to church on Sundays claiming to believe in God and love people and claim that we believe in Jesus and follow Jesus. We go to church on Sundays claiming that we do. But then we go to our jobs on Monday and we kick people out of their homes because they don't pay the real estate tax. We file the papers. We work at the building where that happens. We're an employee there. We support that place. If we support the place that does that, we're just as guilty. There is no one in this country that has any common sense whatsoever that would want someone to come in and take their home after they've spent their entire life paying for it to supply their family with a place to live. No one with any common sense whatsoever would want someone to come in and take that from them and put them on the street with nowhere to live. No one. And if that is true, if no one would want that to happen, and according to our constitutional rights, we have the power to overthrow the government that makes a dumb decision. If we have that power, if we've been given that power, which we have, by the way, we have that power. That's the reason the Constitution and the Bill of Rights were created, because we have the power. We've been given it. It's been kept from us because we don't have the knowledge and education of it anymore. It's not taught in schools anymore. Our children don't know anything about the Bill of Rights. They don't even know the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Think about those words. Think about the importance of that statement that we used to say in our schools every day so that we would not forget. It was important. Our forefathers created that statement for a reason. There's so much value and importance so that we would not forget. But they've taken it away. It's taken out of our schools. Our kids don't learn that anymore. Our kids don't learn our rights anymore. Because if we don't know our rights, we can be controlled. We become slaves of Egypt all over again. And we don't even realize it. But that's what's happening in our country. We are becoming slaves to Egypt. And they are controlling us. And we don't even know that we've got a document that was created that states that we have the power to overthrow a government that does stupid things like that. That we should not be controlled. We should be free. Liberty, justice for all. And the real estate tax is a small thing that just proves the ignorance of this country and what we've allowed to happen. And how stupid it sounds. How dumb and ignorant it is to think that is fair for anyone. There is not a person on the face of this earth that would want that to happen to them and their family. If you would, you're an evil person. There's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with you. That law right there needs to be evoked immediately. Immediately. It needs to be taken out. That shouldn't exist. If you want to tax me for my land, that's fine. I'll pay you some tax when I first buy it. But to tax me for the rest of my life and take it from me if I don't give it to you every year, that is wrong. Absolutely. Against the Constitution. Against what the Founding Fathers created this country to do. It's wrong. I should have the freedom to live where I want. Who's arrogant enough to say that they created this land? That they created those trees? That they created that grass that grows there? That they created this sun that makes that grass grow? Who's arrogant enough to say that they created everything? No one created this land but God. No one created this land but God. The same God this country was founded on. The same God that is mentioned in our Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and in our Bill of Rights and on our money. That God. That one. The one that we have forgotten. That God created the land. And if He wants me to have some land, there's no man on this earth that can take it from me because it's His. And if you try to take it from me, it's wrong. And God's got a place set aside for people like that. Jesus calls it hell. But if you live the rest of your life treating people that way and thinking of people that way and only caring about your money and yourself, that's where you're going. There's no doubt. God plainly states that. If you don't serve Him and you don't follow Jesus because He's the gate, if anyone's been to church on Sunday, you know that Jesus is the only way to the Father. He's the only way. Through Him, He says, I am the gate. No one gets to the Father but through me. Those are His words. If we believe Him, if we claim to be a Christian, and a lot of us claim to be, if someone asks you, you claim to be a Christian. And if you claim to be a Christian, you claim to know Jesus. And if you know Him, you know what He says. And He says, love God with all of your heart, your mind, and your soul. That means every part of you. There's nothing left for you. Nothing. There's no selfish desires left in you because you've given it all to God. You loved Him with all of your heart, with all of your mind, all of your soul. Every part of your being, you love Him more than the money, than the lies, than the deception, the selfish desires. And He also says, love your neighbor as yourself. Yourself. And if you wouldn't want someone to come take your land after paying it off for 30 years of your life, finally owning it, finally being free from the burden of having to pay for it, and you think it's okay for someone to lose that because they don't pay a tax every year, you don't love your neighbor as yourself because you wouldn't want that to happen to you. And you're not a Christian if that's the case. You're not following Jesus. You don't truly believe in Him if that's the way you think. And you're not getting to the Father because you're not going through Him. There's a lot of things wrong in this country. We have been enslaved in so many ways. So many. And it's time that we take our country back. If God created an herb-bearing seed that the world calls marijuana, if He created that, and He created an endocannabinoid system in my body that receives the cannabinoids from that plant, He created it for a reason. He created it for me to have. He created it for me to use. He created it for me to use for Him and for life. and for happiness and for joy and for healing. He created that for everything that I need to use it for in this life. He gave it to me for that reason, so that I could have access to it while I'm in this body. Once my spirit leaves this body, I don't need that plant anymore, that herb-bearing seed. But while I'm in this body, I need it. If it'll help heal me of things like ulcerative colitis, if it'll help heal someone that has seizures, if it'll help supply the resources that I need to survive. I mean, the first car was created with the cannabis sativa plant. It ran on a fuel created by the cannabis sativa plant. The panels were more powerful than steel, 10 times. Steel, metal, aluminum, I don't know. Whatever we make cars out of now, it says that the cannabis sativa plant was 10 times stronger. And the Model T was made out of it. I mean, how awesome is that? That plant can be utilized, that herb-bearing seed can be utilized for everything. Just about everything that we need. Let's clarify that we need. There's benefits in the seed. That might be one of the reasons DuPont didn't want it, because the seeds have something to do with oil and paint. I think DuPont owns most of the paint companies, using the synthetic stuff. But at one time, the seed of the cannabis sativa plant was used for that. This country was founded in the name of God. There is no doubt of that. It's written on everything. Every document that was created by the founding fathers of this country has the statement in there, something relating to God. There's no disputing that. None. If you live in this country, you're living in a country that was founded on the belief of God. You cannot dispute that. And if you choose to live in this country, you choose to live in a country that believes in God. It was founded on that belief. And if God tells me that He created an herb-bearing seed and called it my meat, and He also instructed me to burn incense with it, to put fire to it and release the incense, because He did. And something significant happens when we release the incense. That's what contributes towards me not having ulcerative colitis anymore, because I inhale the incense from that herb. That's what contributes to the friend of mine not having seizures anymore, because of the incense that is released from that herb when fire is put to it, the way God created it. Something significant happens when that incense is inhaled through my sinuses into my body, and those cannabinoids attached to those endocannabinoid receivers that are inside of us, the cannabinoid receptors that are inside of us in the endocannabinoid system. Something significant happens. And it happens that way for a reason. It helps me love God more. It helps me put Him first. It helps me to see Him. It helps me to hear Him. And it helps me love my neighbor. Amazingly, the two things that Jesus told us to do, commanded us to do, this herb-bearing seed helps me with that. And I know that I'm not the only one. It's not a coincidence. I'm not the only person in this world that herb-bearing seed does that to. I'm not. I know there's more people. I wish one day I could see the amount of people that know that truth, that know the truth of what I've said in this recording. If we could all come together, everyone that hears this, that knows that everything I've said in this recording is true, if we all come together, we can overthrow the government that controls our society, our country. If you believe in what I've said in this recording, let me know. Let's make it happen. Let's stop living as captives. Let's stop living as slaves. Let's be set free. Let's set ourselves free. We've been bound long enough, and it's time for a change. It's time for us to do what it says that we have the right to do. Take back our country out of the hands of the ones that are trying to destroy it, that have been destroying it since 1937. Let's take it back. It's time. Let's do it. Let's make it important. Make it important. I know there's a lot of things in our life that we make important, but this is probably one of the most important things that we will do in our lifetime. It's that important. It is that important. We have to do this. We have to take our country back for the ones that are controlling us, that have enslaved us. It's time to get our freedom back. Let's do it. What are we waiting on? I cannot do this without you. I want to do this. Every part of my heart wants to do this. I want to get our freedoms back in this country. I want to fight for them. But I need your help. I can't do this by myself. But if enough of us come together, I know we can. I know we can. It's worth fighting for. It's truly worth dying for. If you think about it. As hard as that is to say, it's worth dying for. There were people in our history that have fought over rights and freedoms. That's what a lot of wars are fought of. The Civil War was fought over freedom. The World War, I don't know. I don't know the history of this country in that regard to that extent, but I know that most wars are fought for freedom. And we have relatives that believed in that freedom, that fought and died for that freedom. What makes us any different from them? Why are we scared? Why are we going to be weak? We're not weak. We are just as strong as they are. We can stand up and fight. We can take back this country and make it what it was, what it used to be, where cannabis sativa grows everywhere, like God intended. And if you need it, you just go pick it. If you've got an ailment, you go burn incense. You don't have to worry about somebody taking you to jail and taking you away from your family for having access to something God made, as if God made a mistake. It grows everywhere, the way God created. He even said that in Genesis chapter 1, verse 29. He created it to grow all over the face of the earth. Those were His words. The words of God. The one we believe in. Let me know. I don't know the best way to contact someone, but my name is Jeremy Strickler. I live in Robertsdale, Alabama. And if the wrong people hear this, they might come try to take me out because they don't want this message to be shared. They don't want freedom in this country. They want to keep control. I know they do. I wrote a book recently called 40 Days with Jesus, where a lot of things were revealed in that book. And the first thing I stated in the beginning of that book is when you're willing to share your testimony, you have to be willing to die. You have to. We have to be willing to die for what we believe is true. But here's one thing I know for certain. When Jesus walked this earth, no one could touch Him. No one could kill Him until it was time. There are numerous places where that is described where they could not touch Him until it was His appointed time to die. And if we have a message that God wants us to reveal the same way He wanted Jesus to reveal His, God's going to allow the message to get out. God's going to keep us from being able to be harmed until He's ready. It's going to be on His time. And we don't have to live in fear. We can live by faith. And if we are truly doing it for the Lord, which I am, this is not for me, it's for Him. I have His protection. And if anyone tries to take me out, they're going to answer to Him. They're going to stand before Him. Every knee will bow one day. Every knee will bow to our Creator one day. Because there is no doubt of a Creator. There's no doubt that God created everything that we see. Man couldn't have created this. This is not an accident. Things this perfect, our ecosystem, the way everything works so perfectly and functions off of each other, that is not a coincidence. That is not an accident. That is not from an explosion. You can't explode anything and it just magically form back together perfectly. This was created. Something this perfect was created. You cannot deny that. No one has ever created anything that was perfect without truly making it that way. You can't just get a paintbrush and start painting roughly on a piece of paper and it turn out in a perfect portrait. It takes a desire to make it look right. Someone has to actually put an effort into it to make it right, to make it perfect. It goes against the laws of nature to think that this all accidentally happened. It takes more faith to believe in the Big Bang Theory than it does that God exists. It's easy to see. We can look up the sky and see that someone created that. We can look at a tree grow from a little seed and realize that someone created that. We can look at a seed grow inside of a woman and turn into a human being. From a little nothing, microscopic seed that we can barely see. And it forms into a living, breathing person. You. Think about that. You were created from a little seed, from a little egg. Everything is created like that. Everything that God made is like magic. That's the only explanation for it. It's just, it happens because He created it that way. He created it. That's the only way it can exist. The only way. Something this perfect, something this miraculous, something this magical cannot exist by accident, by something exploding. It's ridiculous. It's ludicrous to think that. This is God's. Everything is His. He created all of it. And if someone kills me for sharing this message that I know is of Him, there's descriptions in the Bible of the place that you will end up. That you will spend not just a lifetime, but eternity. It never ends. Ever. It never ends. Our brains can't comprehend that because we can only comprehend time. And we know this life ends eventually. But there's going to be an eternity that never ends. And we're going to spend one of two places when that occurs. When our spirit leaves this body, we're going to spend one of two places for eternity. It's either with God or away from God. And the place that's away from God, our brains can't even comprehend how horrible it is. We can't. So if you think it's in your best interest to kill me because I want to tell the truth about the Lord and reveal the truth to His people, that's fine. First off, God isn't going to let you, but He knows your heart. So just by attempting to do it, that's all it takes. It just has to be the desire of your heart. You don't have to physically do it. Jesus says that. He says you don't have to physically commit adultery. It can just be the desire of your heart. You can just desire a woman with your eye and commit adultery against your wife. If it's just the desire of your heart, same thing as doing it. This message is going to go out. And this country is going to be set free again. It's God's will. He doesn't want His people to be captive anymore. He doesn't. And if it's His will, it's going to happen. And I know it's His will. I know for a fact He wants us to have access to the cannabis sativa plant. I know for a fact He wants us to have that. Because that's the way He created it in the beginning. He created it to be that way. It's time. It's time. It's time.